you can't say everything that you protect because there's some things are classified. How far are we along? You know, how much of the country would go down if it happened right now? All right, Dex, do we have our special guest? We were going to talk to Andrew tonight.
Yes, I have him, and let me get him online.
So Andrew is one of the main top people at EMP Shield. He was with them when they ended up, basically pulled in and asked by different agencies to come help during the T-Man administration. So we're going to bring in Andrew. There's also the contest running, but also we're going to have a few questions for him, and then I'm going to actually pull up a couple things.
And Adam, while we're getting him on, and he is on the line, but while we're getting ready, if anybody in chat has a question for Andrew, put it in all caps, and I'll try and capture it and add him to our list if we can get to him.
So one of the promises,
because we've got a few from other people too.
Okay, and so one of the things is over the last week and a half, we have gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. People are worried about EMP. Obviously, this is one of the biggest threats to our country as far as EMP hack, grid going down, these kind of things. This is actually what everybody is talking about as far as the next play in the playbook. So we thought it would be great if we had Andrew on, and the timing of it. We, of course, have the contest at the end of the month. So again, I hope that we can have him answer some of the questions. Also, they know a lot more. We won't be able to get everything that I wish we could. But again, I think we'll be able to ask some really good questions here. So just let me know, Dex, when we get him on.
Oh, no, he's on.
All right. Andrew, what's going on?
I'm here. Hey, what's going on, brother? Adam, Dex, and the Foogle fam. Good to be on.
So I actually took down some of the questions that were asked by Foogle fam members and everything else. I guess you guys are probably really busy right now, huh?
We are incredibly busy. People see, number one, people realize there's a threat. You've got President Putin, who has literally said anybody who tries to stop us will see consequences, that have never before been seen in history. So there's a lot of people waking up right now and realizing that there is a direct threat against the United States, and also against other countries that are either considering being involved or might already be involved. Unfortunately, Putin does mean business, and we need to take his threat seriously. And there's a lot of activity going on, obviously at the federal level and with agencies as well. So there's just a lot of stuff going on right now. And but I'm glad to be on because, helping educate people, the more they know and the more aware they are, the better they can be prepared. And so I'm very happy to be here right now.
So Dex, do you want to go first? I know that you had some questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with something simple. Like, how does an EMP actually work? And not the 1 hour version, but the simple layman's version. Like, some people think it's just like magic, rays shooting through the sky or something. But how does it actually work?
Yeah, and I'll keep this short and sweet. So primarily, EMP is created by a nuclear weapon. And the primary cause, the primary thing that creates the EMP is actually the gamma radiation from that blast. And so you've got high altitude nuclear EMP, which is created from a normal nuclear weapon, and then you have super EMP, which is it's created from a blast specifically designed to release extreme amounts of gamma radiation. And basically, what's going on is radiation is it's shooting downwards towards the Earth and passing through the atmosphere. And when it does that, it creates a thing called ionization, which basically just means that it's shooting free electrons down towards the Earth. That occurs in two phases, one from the gamma radiation, and then the second phase is from the matter that falls a bit slower than the radiation. And these two phases, which are incredibly devastating to microelectronics at the ground level of the Earth, are, they're roughly 50,000 volts per square meter in a DC charge. It's huge. It's at roughly 300 miles above the Earth. It will span across the entire United States. That's how how widespread this weapon can be. And then there's a third phase of the EMP, which is actually when that blast is pushing outwards into space, causes that magnetosphere to fluctuate, which then creates a low and slow charge at the ground level of the Earth, inducing into the larger antennas, which is primarily the grid, because the grid can be a mile, 10 miles, or 100 miles long. And so the E3 portion is what's taking down the remainder of the grid, and the components that were already not destroyed from the E1 and the E2, which is basically then destroying the rest of the electrical grid as a whole.
Now, what are the different types of EMP weapons?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So primarily there's two types of EMP weapons. You have regular hemp, which is just a nuclear boomer up in the atmosphere, and then you have super EMP, which is a modified nuclear device designed to produce that gamma radiation. And then there's other energy weapons. So you have directed energy weapons, and then there's high-powered microwave. There's a bunch of specific energy weapons, but as far as EMP goes, it's primarily the two, which is EMP and then super EMP, which can be up to 200,000 volts per square meter.
Now, so we talked. So we've been with you for a long time. I don't know. I can't remember if we were with you before the executive orders that were signed. But essentially, to explain to the audience, the previous president signed executive orders to immediately harden our grid. We know from at least publicly, they said that they had this China task force around the same time, and they said that one of the biggest threats to our country was an EMP or something like it, or knocking down our grid,
right.
And there was a threat to it. And then he went into a bunch of secret meetings, and then kind of came out, and then we got the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, EMP resilience report, essentially saying that every American should have 6 months to a year of food due to the risk of having our whole grid go down. And then there was an executive hardening the grid. You were on that EMP resilience report. Your company was kind of called up, and then you guys went to work. Now, did the current president nullify those previous executive orders? Did that end up undoing itself the day that he got put in, or what happened?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and the answer is not what we would actually presume. So that executive order is still in place, believe it or not, and he did nullify quite a few executive orders, but that one did remain. So that's not to say that it's being actioned, because it's at a crawl pace right now, as opposed to the previous president, where we were at a very decent pace at getting things going. So it has slowed down, but it is still there, and it technically is still law. Now,
you guys have worked with agencies like DHS, DoD, and others, and obviously you have a lot of work ahead of you as far as
right.
Everything that is going on. Do you believe it is smart to protect yourself against this? Obviously, you guys are in the business of it, but as far as, do you think that this is still as much of a threat as it was 2 or 3 years ago?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the most devastating weapons in our adversaries' arsenals. And I think that right now is probably the highest threat that I've seen. There has been direct threats from China and Russia to use super EMP weapons against the United States, and a myriad of other threats, not mentioning what they would be using, but we know that this is one of the most devastating weapons they have. So yes, I think, and this is not Andrew from EMP Shield trying to sell a product. I want people to be aware. I want people to make their own decisions. Do what's best for you, your family, your loved ones, and your friends. But yes, it is a very severe threat. We all hope it does not happen. It would be, it would put us back to the 1800s, and that would be very bad for our country. But yes, it is a threat, and people do need to be prepared. Now, EMP Shield obviously does have a solution, but if that solution is not for you and you just want to use a Faraday bag or a Faraday cage, that's okay too. I just want people to be aware that this is a real thing. It is incredibly dangerous to our country, and hopefully we're able to educate a lot of people tonight. So
now we have a few questions from the Foogle fam as far as the different questions that people have been sending in. But first, I did want to ask one more question as far as
sure.
So let's see here. As far as kind of when China tested that FOBS, the fractional orbital bombardment system, were you guys blown away by that, or were you guys called and they said they couldn't believe this, or was that fractional orbital bombardment, is that a risk of actually sending an EMP as well?
I need to be careful what I say. Maybe we'll pass on that one if that's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I am sorry.
That's okay.
All right. All right, and then let's see here. Kevin Foogle fam.
Here's what I can.
Okay.
Here's a maybe a simpler answer. There is weapons in space. Period. So that's just something. There is weapons. Number one, obviously, hypersonic platforms as a delivery system are becoming more common and being tested by our adversaries, such as China and Russia. And it is a very dangerous delivery system because of its speed and the ability to deter that platform because of the speed. But there is also, there's a incredibly, incredibly high likelihood of having weapons in space. And that's about all I'll say there.
One other question, and this should be easy, as far as are you personally preparing? I know that you're higher up in the company that's dealing with all these agencies. Are you personally preparing for just anything and everything?
I am, absolutely, and I think everybody else should be too. And we always we plan for the worst and we expect hopefully the best, right? I am personally preparing myself, and a lot of the majority of our company is also doing the same. In fact, we had it wasn't a deliberate company-wide discussion, but it's been a discussion even more recently because of the conflict that's going on now. But every employee has EMP shield protection in their homes and their vehicles. And then we've had the discussion generally with employees and amongst ourselves, to obviously be prepared for water, which is very important, food, shelter, having a plan, which is something that a lot of people think they have, but having a thorough plan that you've thought through the different variables and scenarios. And then me personally, I've been prepared for quite a while, and I'm always just trying to improve my level of preparedness. I do have a cabin that's off grid and that sort of thing, but that's just kind of been the way I always have been. I spent a long time in the military in special operations, and for some reason, this is just something that I've always understood, that it's important to be prepared, because if you're not and something happens, there's nothing you can do at that point. It's the same with EMP. If you're not prepared before an EMP, after it happens, there's pretty much not a whole lot you can do other than start walking or ride a bike, and hopefully you have somewhere to go. So this is something that I hope a lot of people are really thinking about, and it's not to scare people.
Okay, and then we have kind of a list of people that wanted their questions asked. Kevin from Foogle fam asked, "Will unplugging my truck battery prevent surge to the starter in an EMP?"
Oh, hey, that's a cool question. And hey, Kevin, yeah. So that's actually a really interesting question that many people ask, because there's some idea out there that if it's unplugged or it's disconnected, that somehow it's going to prevent damage to the vehicle. But the reality is that with the release of these free electrons and the induction of it, your electronics is going to be inducing these electrons regardless of if the system's connected or not, and they will still be destroyed. In fact, I'd posit that having the battery in the vehicle might actually provide more protection, because the battery is going to absorb a portion of that energy, although it's still not going to be enough to completely protect the vehicle, which is why you would want EMP protection on your vehicle. The majority of modern day vehicles, 1980 and older, are very high likelihood of being destroyed after an EMP.
That's good to know. And then KCH3 says, "I have an off-road vehicle with..." Part of the reason why we brought Andrew on is because he is an expert in this field, as far as, this is what he does, eats and breathes and sleeps. So some of these are just normal question unrelated to, obviously you guys are EMP Shield. So you're the big name. You're one of the biggest names we know. in this. So it's really awesome that we have you as a resource. KCH3 says, I have an off-road vehicle with lots of electronics, a ham radio, and an EMP shield installed. Are my electronics and my ham protected?
Oh, KCH3, that's a great question. Thanks for it. So the answer is, if you have a ham or a radio system on a mobile platform, you are going to want a separate device to protect that because it's its own system and it's got an antenna. So we do have 3 different versions of ham radio devices. We've got F connectors, N connectors, and then UHF connectors at the variables of 100 watts all the way up to 1500 watts for commercial applications, which is also used by DHS shares and some Air Force Mars personnel as well. I said that twice, sorry. But there is protection available, and our radio models are actually the most affordable because, we understand that we don't want to keep the price very high because we want people to be able to protect, as an example, on a mobile platform, the vehicle itself and then the radio system. So those are available on the website.
Now, Bill Bradley says, are EMP shields built in China like everything else?
Oh, my gosh. No. So actually, this is one of the things that, when we started EMP Shield, it was literally one of our number one goals was to have 100% American made. And this doesn't mean assembled. This is not assembled in America. This is literally, we build almost everything except for some of the components right here in house. We have 2 manufacturing facilities and a third is on the way. We utilize a combination of pick and place machines, which takes the parts and actually builds the boards. These are the same machines that build the F-35 fighter jets electronics. Actually, there's only like 20 of them in the United States. So we've got that, and then a second line coming, and then we have about 70 employees who then hand assemble and solder and do the electronics, and then pot, which is the weather resistance hardening for the devices, and we do it all 100% in-house, and then we ship them ourselves. And everything is in-house right here in Burlington, Kansas.
So, and I've said that, and I've gotten comments every time like, oh, I bet parts of it are not, and parts of this. And I said, this is one of the few things, again, that we know of that's, 100%. So that's awesome. Don Alberta says, how many EMPs can an EMP shield take?
Oh, so what we know to be a fact is it can take at least 40. We didn't see a point in just continuing to test over and over. So it can take 50,000 volts per square meter 40 times. So it's an incredible amount. And here's the trick, though, and this is important for people to understand: is you're not going to have simultaneous EMPs back to back. You're going to have to leave time for the atmosphere to recharge, which would be roughly 16 to 20 hours at a minimum for that atmosphere to recharge. But with that being said, it would make sense that if an adversary wanted to 100% ensure everything was destroyed and maybe had an inkling that things maybe weren't destroyed or the first EMP was not as effective, they could wait a day or two and then do it again. And I say that so for the folks out there who have things in a Faraday cage, be cognizant and aware that if you pull those things out because you think it's over, there could potentially be a second attack. So be very careful. Pull the electronics out after the EMP out of your Faraday cage if you have them in there, or unplug them from the wall, which is protected by the EMP shield in the home. Use it and then plug it right back into the protected system, because you don't know if it's going to happen again after the recharging of the atmosphere.
Yeah, we've told people many times that it's going to be in pulses and it's going to happen multiple times. One thing that I thought was really cool, you've helped a lot of the Foogle fan members just outside of stuff. You guys have done things that we just never have seen anybody do. You're part of the community as far as you are a prepper. You are part of, you before you were ever with EMP Shield, you were actually doing the same stuff. You were into this. So again, I think that's why a lot of us like you more than, like you a lot more than just a company. Todd Wesley says, I have a cargo trailer with small gas generator. Is there an EMP shield to protect the small generators and trailer electronics?
Oh, I love that question. So this actually plays into a myth that's out there, and it's really been bugging me for years, because there's companies out there that will try to sell you a Faraday bag for $400, and they have a picture of a little Honda generator, a pull start. I'm going to debunk the myth right here on the show. If you have a pull start generator and it's a mechanically driven generator, meaning there is no microelectronics, you don't need to protect it. There's nothing to get destroyed on that pull start generator. Now, with that being said, if you have a large whole home generator that uses electronics to control the whatever, and if it's got them, then you're going to need protection there. Now, as far as his trailer, if he has electronics in the trailer itself, then absolutely he will want protection, but just not for the generator. He's going to need it for the electronics, unless he's got a really fancy generator on that trailer. And I don't know what the system would be, but he could certainly, I'd say, give us a call. Be sure to tell us that Marv sent you, and then we'll get you exactly what you need.
Now, let's see here. Oh, can you make an EMP shield to help folks with a pacemaker? What will happen to a pacemaker when an EMP goes off?
Oh, that's a really good question. Man, you got some good questions today, Adam. That's a great question.
We've
been getting that a lot this week.
They're all from the Foogle
You can
fan.
imagine why, but yeah, this is amazing. So I love it. So here's the thing. When you're talking EMP and the induction of freed electrons and the coupling of energy, the antenna size, or the footprint of what's inducing the energy, and many other variables really, really matters. And so about a year and a half ago, we had the engineering team really dig into the pacemaker thing, because I wanted to be able to give a correct answer. And here's what's going on with this. Modern day pacemakers, because of their footprint and because of some of the required EMI shielding inside of it, because of things like 5G and other frequencies, there is some shielding in there. There is a very, very low likelihood that it will be taking any damage whatsoever from an EMP. It's too small. It's got some shielding already built into it. It's going to be okay. And that's straight from the EMP Shield engineering team.
So, okay, that's awesome. So basically, most people with pacemakers do not have to worry, or at least with the modern ones. If they don't have a modern one, I would think at some point they're going to get a new one, because I think they have to be replaced every once in a while. Dex?
Right.
Yeah, and Andrew, just to help people understand induction and what that means and the footprint, and the way I try to describe it to people is, if you think about your car and all of the wiring that's running through it, it's a lot. Like, if you've ever looked at all the wiring in a car, it's a lot. Or if you think about your house and all the wiring that's running through the walls, there's a lot of it. And that wire, that copper wire, is what is inducting. And it basically, it's like thinking of it as a giant power antenna that's just sucking up energy out of the event, right? And then when you're talking about a small device, because it's so tiny, it doesn't have as much mass to actually pick up that energy. And is that a good way to think of it? Because I'm trying to, I get this a lot with people. They don't necessarily understand how the induction works and what it means to, you know, to have a house full of wires versus, you know, maybe a small modern cell phone that's highly shielded that might not actually have much of an effect on it.
Well, that's very well said. That pretty much sums it up. Is size does matter when it comes down to induction, and you need to, you know, it has to be large enough to induce enough energy to be destroyed. Now, and that doesn't mean that smaller things can't be destroyed, but when you're talking about something that's the size of a quarter or a little larger than a quarter that has built-in shielding, not to mention there's a lot of other variables too. So as an example, one of the tests we did at Keystone Compliance, which is one of the military certified testing facilities that we went to, and we have another one, which I'll mention here in a second, that people don't know about yet. The angle really matters too. And number one, what we discovered very quickly is the induction rate that we thought would occur is incredibly lower than it actually is in real life. That's not to say that things aren't going to induce a high amount of energy, but it's actually much lower than people would expect. And then number two, we turned the testing equipment in all directions to test the variables. And so depending on how you're standing or where the electrons and the direction and angle they're coming from actually do matter. And this isn't just in reference to pacemakers, this is in reference to everything, but all of that really matters. And if it's not a perfect angle, it's going to induce less energy.
Now, a lot of comments over the last 4 years, and people say, "Why do I need protection if the power will be out everywhere? If the massive one happens, we're sitting in the worst case scenario. Why would they need one if power is going to be out everywhere?"
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions, and it makes sense, because if you haven't thought about it, you're like, well, what's the point? I get it. I get the question, and I'm going to give you the correct answer here. Number one is EMP shield protects against EMP, coronal mass ejections, which is from the sun, and also, of course, power surges, and we guarantee lightning protection as well. So let's use the scenario of solar, the sun, or coronal mass ejection, which is from the sun. It's the charged particles that are shot off. Although we do believe that large-scale coronal mass ejections are cyclical, the last one was the Carrington event. We do believe another one's going to occur, and it could be any time. It could be 50 years. It could be 50 minutes. We don't know. But what we do know for certainty is, although that big one is going to occur at some point, the smaller to medium-sized ones are happening all the time. We've had several instances of small solar flares, just small ones, hitting the Earth, and the grid goes down for a week or 2 weeks. That's just a small, very small coronal mass ejection. So I would hate to be the person that the grid goes down, all that power destroys my home and electronics, and then the grid comes back up 2 weeks later, and I don't have I don't have everything in the home, even though the grid just came right back up, if that makes sense. So that's the first reason why, is because we're also protecting against the sun and also geomagnetic disturbances. And so if the grid goes down and destroys homes, if you have protection, your home's right back up and running, whether the grid comes back in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. When the grid does come back up, you're immediately back up and running. So that's number one. Number two, and this is for a lot of the people that are probably listening right now, is having a backup power system, right? So the grid may go down, but if you have your home protected and your backup power system protected, whether it's solar, generator, wind, water, you name it, if it's protected and the home's protected, you're still going to have power. It's that simple. And a lot of off-grid applications or things like off-grid, it makes sense. And then there's also a lot of regular homes that have solar and have generators, and you're still going to have power even after an EMP. That's kind of one of the benefits if you have protection. And then, of course, number three is lightning. There's everyday events like dirty electricity, power surges, lightning that, we have hundreds of customers every week that are like, if I would have just bought this, or more, I guess these days it's more like every month until we get to the nasty weather seasons. But they say, man, if I would have just had this a couple days ago, I wouldn't have lost $30,000 worth of equipment, or, had to use my insurance. So just having an EMP shield in your home just to protect against regular everyday things that, although some people say, well, it has never happened to me, it could very well happen to you. And then if it occurs, you don't have protection, it's too late. So that's just that's three reasons, why you'd really want to have it in your home.
So I also want to clarify, there's going to be a lot of people that say, that we're affiliated, so that's why we have you on. Just to let you guys know, I actually believe that this will save lives. In the event this happens, I think that this is something that is actually helping the community. In my personal belief that everyone should have this. Yes, it would be perfect if people went through us. But again, part of having you on was to also answer these questions that people have about EMP. EMP is pretty much number one on everybody's mind right now, because they are pretty much the entire world is saying that this playbook either considers a cyber attack next, or an EMP, or something else, because now multiple adversaries, not just China and Russia, now have this capability, even including North Korea. So this is really on the top of everybody's list, and it's like, why didn't we have this in every home? I have told people, like, this should be a requirement when you sell a home, that it should be part of code that it has EMP shield or protection. And I don't understand why it doesn't. People will die without food and water, without everything else. If everybody had this in a backup, it would be like we wouldn't even be phased by an EMP. Instead, 90% of the country would go down. It's insane.
Right. Well, if you don't mind me caveating real quick on that, I'll quickly tell my story about why I decided to leave the military to help start EMP Shield. And it's a really short story. And the fact is, at first, when I heard about EMP Shield, I didn't even think it was real. My friend, Rowdy, he's our vice president, said, Andrew, you got to check this out. And I said, no way. There's no way that's real. There's no way that exists. They're like, no, you have to come with us. We're going to go with the government tech scouts. You can come to the testing. So obviously I was convinced. I met all the government folks. I went to the testing. It's a real technology. But the reason that I actually decided to do this, to quit my career in the military, and I spent a decade in special operations, and I was commissioned for 4.5 years. At the time, I was enlisted, then commissioned. I left because this was a chance for me to do something bigger than myself and to help a very large amount of people, period. That's why I'm doing this right now. And the other thing for people to understand is I love the Foogle fam. I'm part of the fam. The show's great. But if you're not into EMP Shield, that's okay. But the things that we're saying tonight, whether you want the EMP Shield or not, are still highly valuable and educational for everybody listening, because we're telling you things about EMP that many people don't know. And it's going to help you prepare. So that's kind of my...
No, it is. Here's another one for you. If they launch a high-altitude EMP, will there be any radiation or fallout concerns? Are we doomed anyway?
Oh, yeah. So no, that's a great question. It's absolutely not anything to worry about. It's going to be an effective level is at roughly 250 to 300 miles above the Earth. That's like International Space Station height above the Earth. You're probably not even going to see the blast go off unless it's at night. And even then, it's going to be very, very small. So, yeah, it's so high up, there's not going to be any radiation issues. The real effect is going to be, obviously, the free electrons inducing and destroying electronics. And there's no health effects whatsoever from the EMP.
Murphy's Law asked, will an EMP destroy solar panels?
Oh, okay. That's a great question, too. So, no. A solar panel in and of itself is pretty much impervious to an EMP. It has a photovoltaic coating. Some of them might have some diodes, but 99% of solar panels, they're not going to be destroyed. However, a solar panel is designed to collect energy, and they have hundreds of feet of copper trace inside them. So in an EMP, that solar panel is going to collect a huge amount of energy and then go down the line. That the large portion of energy is going to go down the line, although it will induce simultaneously. And so that's why it's very important to have protection on your solar system as well.
And here's one directly from me. Have they updated? We heard this study that 90% of us would perish, and that's not because we were taking each other out or actual physical damage. It was because we didn't have water. The study basically said 90% of Americans would perish if we had a full-scale grid down. Have they updated that at all? Is there anything new as far as have they done any other studies or anything that the people should know?
So, yes, the number itself has not been updated. So the answer to that is no. There is internal debate on the number. We've been discussing it. A lot of people think it should be higher. Some people think it should be a little lower. Regardless of that, it is 90% is an incredibly high number, and that's what the government says is going to be, the level that it's at after 1 year. And it is primarily due to a lack of running water, disease, issues like that, sewer, and then, a lack of food, and then other things that occur, such as no logistics, no transportation, no communication, no internet, everything like that. So it's a culmination of everything. And yeah, sorry, I had a second thought there, but I just lost it.
Dex, do you want to ask the next couple? I'm all of mine are tapped out.
So, is there a difference in the effect of an EMP? Like, I know an EMP is targeted right over the center of America, basically, or a little north of center, to sort of reach the entire U.S., part of Canada, and maybe even a little bit of Mexico, depending on how high it is. Are there different effects of that EMP based on where you live in America versus, say, the east or west coast or the dead center middle of the top of where it goes off?
Yeah, there are, actually. And it's kind of funny. We call it the smiley face. Believe it or not, I was on a meeting this morning with the DEMSO down in Texas, and I always laugh every time they talk about the smiley face. But all that means is, so The intensity, primarily we're discussing the E1 and the gamma radiation and the effects. The intensity does taper the farther away you go from the initial location of the blast above the Earth. So as an example, I'm describing it verbally, it'd be better to see a picture, but if you use color, it would be red in the Midwest and then more of an orange out towards the coast because the intensity kind of tapers off. But that's not to say that the whole country is not going to have damage, because that's not the case. It's regardless of the intensity, it's so much energy that even on the coast, the E1 is still going to destroy microelectronics. It's just that the intensity in the Midwest, if it was to occur above Kansas like we normally account for, that location would basically have more as opposed to on the coasts.
Does that play into the grids and how long it takes a grid to come back up, whether or not the intensity was directly above it, say in the middle of the country versus further out on the coasts?
It could, that's a tough question because there's so many variables. In fact, we have physicists and engineers, not just at the EMP Shield, but in the government and in corporations around the United States, thousands of them doing numbers every single day in an attempt to evaluate what the almost to the T impact would be. They do simulations, they do all kinds of things. The current understanding is that if it's even just a regular hemp at 300 miles above the Earth, there's a higher likelihood of pretty much everything as far as grid goes being destroyed. But that, the problem is it's a question that has so many variables, but the short answer is there's going to be extreme damage
now
across the United States.
I just saw a bunch of really good ones. These ones, if you could do rapid fire, because there's
sure
4 of them, and I don't want to forget them. First one, I want to say was Dale said, what about cars with push start? Can they be protected? Do they need to be protected? Cars with push start button.
Yep. If it's mechanically driven, if it can be mechanically driven without electronics, it'll still function. If it can basically drive without the electronics and it's only mechanical, then it should be good to go.
But with push button start, that would need.
I thought you meant like. I'm sorry. I thought you meant like push the car to make it start.
Yeah.
With a
push
start?
to start, not the old school trucks.
Oh,
not a hill start.
No, man, I'm screwing up the rapid fire. Sorry, that's okay. Okay, so push button start, you're going to need protection.
Okay, and then is a solar panel unplugged, 100 watts, safe in the closet? I would say yes, based on your
solar
previous.
Panel. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
And then Sandy B says, why didn't they do this in the first place? If this is so important, why didn't they just do this in the first place? Somebody else answered money. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't think it's money at all. And if you're talking about the national power grid, it's actually fairly inexpensive comparatively to what we spend on things that are not even remotely close to national security. I don't think it's actually a money thing. If I knew the answer to that question, we'd be having more protection across the grid right now. It's even the EMP Commission 2003, 2004 says this is a reasonably inexpensive thing to begin doing.
Okay, and then
it's obviously easier to include it. Yeah.
Dale said, how do I protect my radios? You make ones for ham radios, but other than that, things that are plugged into the wall. If my computer is off and plugged into the wall, the house one protects that. I think he was saying, like, if the computer's off, does it matter? Does it matter if the computer's on or off?
No, it doesn't matter. On or off, it's still going to, if it doesn't have protection in the home and it's not in the Faraday cage, it's going to be destroyed.
And then Dex, you have a question about fires, like how fires started about the Carrington level, right?
Yeah, the fires that happened during the Carrington level event, should we expect to see those again, since in today's modern time with another Carrington level event or even an EMP?
Yes, it would actually be worse. It would be much worse in this day of age if we had a Carrington event. We're talking about thousands, the equivalent of thousands of nuclear weapons hitting the atmosphere. the level of energy would be incredibly extreme. So yes, there would be a reasonable likelihood of fire.
So that is probably part of the 90% perishing would be these fires start all over the country. And I mean, think about it. There would be no communications. Right. So then you would not have the fire department, responding to everything. That would just be kind of, it would be a heyday. I mean, people would just be running around with like chickens without their heads.
Right. And I do want to caveat, the likelihood of fire is a lot higher with a Carrington level event as opposed to an EMP. An EMP could still create fire, especially from the E3 portion and the energy coming from the grid into the home. But that is a lower level compared to a Carrington level event where it's just an insane amount of energy.
Would an EMP shield protect if we had a Carrington level event? A lot of things would catch fire, but if you have an EMP shield, would that protect your home? Like your house wouldn't catch on fire or your wires wouldn't?
Yep, it absolutely would, because the EMP shield is designed to sense the over voltage coming from the grid and will disconnect your home's breakers from the grid when it senses it.
So that could save somebody, because the EMP or the solar flare, both are going to be silent. We're not going to hear it, right? So somebody could be sleeping and sleep right through something happening. All of a sudden, their whole house is on fire. Their electronics, their outlets are on fire. They're going to be sleeping and probably, passive carbon monoxide. But that could be prevented.
It could be. And now to kind of touch on that just really quickly, for a CME, we're going to know, well, if it becomes mainstream, it's going to take roughly 2.5 to 3 days for the charged particles to reach the Earth from the sun. So I would hope there would be some kind of a warning prior to disconnect your home. Then these are for folks that don't have EMP shield to go disconnect your home. For EMP, there's absolutely no warning. It's going to happen within a couple microseconds. It's already, the majority of it's done, and then it's just the E3 portion that the EMP shield then, waiting for the over voltage and disconnecting the home.
But with the sun, part of it hits us in 8 minutes. Will that do any effect to us here on the ground?
So yeah, that's the flare portion or the X-rays. It is going to have some impact. A lot of satellites, a lot of communications equipment is going to have some issues, especially if it's a very large X-ray. But it's not even close to what's going to happen with the charged particles.
Okay. Dex?
Yeah. Somebody wants to know, David wanted to know, what are the components inside, if you could reveal, which I know you probably can't, but is there anything you could share about what's actually in there?
I'd love to. Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about what the actual technologies are. Obviously, it's a very proprietary thing that we've invented. But what I can explain is generally how it works. There's two things you need to consider when you're looking at EMP protection, and that's the speed of the device. So its capability to begin pulling energy and at what speed. And engineering always argues that speed's not the right word. It's actually reaction. But how fast it can do that, and then how robust the device is and able to take certain amounts of energy. So in the EMP shield, there's actually 3 technologies that are functioning in conjunction with each other to be able to do this. So the first technology is incredibly fast. The very first technology, and that's the first thing that is reacting at insane speed, so at roughly half a nanosecond, it begins doing its job until it hits a certain level of its capability, because we don't want to overload one technology, because if that technology gets destroyed, the device can't function. So it then does a thing called load shedding. Once it hits a threshold, it load sheds the remaining energy to the second technology, and then that same concept continues to a third technology, and it kind of goes throughout that process so that the device is able to do things like take multiple hits and so forth.
Well, so there was a question here. How do we have any percentage of how likely this is? Have they ever put a number on it? They say 90% would perish, but how likely is something like this? And is this a higher percentage more likely than any other disaster? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. The likelihood of an EMP happening, I could never tell you, because, it's a weapon. The likelihood of 90% perishing, there's been the study of that, I mean, that was ongoing for a long time. I mean, this study's been going on for several decades. So I think that number's pretty close to accurate. Scientists are more or less arguing about a couple percentages in either direction on that one. Now, the likelihood of the sun doing what the sun does is very, very high likelihood. So we are, and this is not to scare people, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, we will take another Carrington level event. I don't know when. They think it's cyclical at roughly 150 years. So which means we're getting around that time, but it's not 100% predictable either. But it will eventually happen again at that level. We just really don't know when.
And when a Carrington level event happens, if it's pointed at us, it would essentially right now. Oh, I guess here's one. So you guys have started protecting multiple different things around the. You can't say everything that you protect because there's obviously there's some things are classified. But as far as how far are we along? You know, how much of the country would go down if it happened right now?
Yeah. Well, the power grids do not have protection yet. That's I hate to say it. It's what we're striving to do, but the actual power grids themselves and the majority of the nuclear facilities and the power facilities do not have protection. And I know it's a scary thing to say, but I need to say it because it's the truth. Now, as far as protection on specific critical infrastructure, we are beginning to put critical infrastructure protection out there. Some really cool things we're doing. We've now started doing walkthroughs for entire counties. So we're working with the emergency services teams in different counties, and we're walking through, and we're soon going to be outfitting entire counties with EMP Shield. Unfortunately, that's more of the county's critical infrastructure, like communications equipment, emergency services, the EOCs, and then the facilities and the vehicles and stuff like that. Not so much the grid yet. But we are doing that. We're also working to outfit specific data centers and all kinds of other critical infrastructure. But unfortunately, the grids are not yet protected.
And then, so civilians are essentially the ones that are left out here. I mean, yes, they have to get it themselves.
For everybody listening, it's on you. You need to protect yourself. Absolutely.
That's what I've been saying for years, Andrew. It's like no one. It was like because I used Hurricane Katrina as an example. What happened with the police and the people that were protecting? What happened is when that disaster happened, it was so bad and so fast. Those police people, those sheriffs, they had families too. They had mothers in nursing homes and things like that. They had to leave their station to go save their own families. That's how bad it was. And it's like, if we have something like this happen, that, they're trying to prepare for it, military bases, these big agencies, they're going to have a plan, but the average person does not. Would you agree with that?
I would. That's why I've been, and, you guys have helped and hundreds of other organizations, but we're trying to get the awareness out there that you need to protect yourself. And that's even what DHS tells that's what the report was about. It was saying to the normal population, like, hey, wake up. You need to have this prepared. And they're not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but they're saying be prepared in case it does,
Yeah. Dex, do you have anything before we go to the last part here?
There was one comment from Save Yourselves, Sheeple. He said, "You saved my home twice from direct lightning strike." So I thought that was interesting. I'm sure you've heard many of those stories too, right?
We have. So we've got hundreds of real world testimonials. Obviously it's lightning related, but we've actually started building a thing. We call it the Wall of Fame, where when we get these EMP shields back from the lightning strike, we actually put them up on the wall, and we've got a ton up there and a lot of testimonials. And there's even been folks. So the EMP shield protects 250 linear feet. So there's been instances where a townhouse with two sides of the home, both were protected. And there was actually an investigation because they couldn't figure out how in the world the direct lightning strike didn't destroy anything. And then there's a video testimonial of this out there, literally. And if you guys want the link, I can send it to you later, but they couldn't figure it out. And it's because they had an EMP shield on one side of the home.
Well, that's pretty incredible. We know, my wife knew somebody who essentially was out $65,000. Their house caught fire. This was in Washington about probably 10 years ago, but the same family, they lost their cousin to a fire. The same thing caused by lightning, and the person was in sleeping in that side of the home, and they perished before they even knew what was going on. So it's pretty serious. As far as lightning in the Midwest, we don't have it as much out here. When we do, we get scared the crap out of. But in the Midwest, you guys have that all the time. So I would highly think about that. Dex, a lot of the times he can barely do a show because he'll have storms outside that are just insane. Dex, of course, is protected. And also the things that it can protect are things that Dex used to be replacing all the time. Dex, didn't you used to replace the part that connects your house all the time?
Yeah, I used to have damage all the time I have an outbuilding that's connected, and it would pick up strikes nearby, and yeah, that's now a thing of the past.
Yeah, you literally couldn't do a couple shows because of it, and then that was before you installed yours. So, anyways, Dex, do you want to talk about you guys are going to be doing the contest too? You guys are going to be giving away a couple more. Is that right?
Yeah, that absolutely. So just so folks know, and we're going to get to the news in just a minute. The rest of the news in just a minute. I normally say it's at the end of the show, but if you open the description on YouTube and click on show notes, you can get to our website, and on our website is how you can enter the contest. And I'll let Andrew talk more about what the contest is and what they're giving away, but we're going to have it there every day, every show for you, so that and a reminder, because you can enter daily as well. So, hey, Andrew, you want to tell everybody what you guys are giving away?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're giving away 3 EMP shields, and we've been doing this kind of every quarter. And I think as far as EMP Shield Marfoogle, we've been doing it at least twice a year. So there's a lot of folks that have probably already done the first one. Jump into this new one. I'm sure I'll come on and we'll announce the winners, here in about 28 days when it's over, or 27 days. And I'm really excited for it. It's one of the things I really look forward to every single quarter is being able to give these away and help folks out, especially the Foogle fam. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So again, folks, we'll remind you, just like I do every show so far. We've done it last three shows. We'll keep doing it so you can remember, even if you've already entered, to go back and enter again, because you get daily entries and you want to increase your odds of winning. So I know there's plenty of people out there that want an EMP shield, maybe can't afford it right now, or need an extra one. They've already got one. Right. They need one for a car or a house. This could be your ticket. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andrew, for coming on. And I'm sure there'll be more questions in the comments. Maybe if you see any interesting ones, if you could check back on this video, maybe just check the comments after we're done. Yep. Maybe tomorrow, just check in and see if there's anything you can answer for people. I don't know if you'll have time to do that, but I'm sure in the comments of this video you can respond as EMP Shield. We get so many and we're overwhelmed with it. Like, we don't have, we're not experts. This is what you do all day, every day. Mm-hmm. I think it was really helpful. Right. As far as I did not know that solar panels were safe. I knew that you had to protect solar, but I did not know that but the actual solar panels by themselves were safe. So that was something I did not know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, thanks so much for having me on, man. I love the Foogle fam. It's literally the greatest group of people, and we take calls all the time, and everybody keep calling into us and tell us you're from the Foogle fam, and you'll get a discount. And one last thing, and I'm really excited about this, but we just recently passed another series of tests from one. I won't be too specific yet, but it's from one of the senior leaders of the U.S. EMP Commission. And those test reports should be out shortly. It could be anywhere from 3 weeks to a little bit over a month, but they'll be out. And there's going to be a white paper, and they were very excited about the test results. And I think everybody else is going to be too.
Well, and will more stuff be declassified in the future? Can you just take a guess on kind of what is happening behind the scenes with EMP stuff and all that? Do you foresee in the next year that more stuff will be out?
I think so. What I can tell you for sure is there is going to be a series of reports coming out, a couple, EMP Shield will be mentioned, at least as a contributor or co-author in several of them. So just keep your eyes open, and obviously I'll be sure to pass the information when those are released. Some of them are for critical infrastructure, some of them about the effects of EMP or the government's ability to measure the effectiveness and all kinds of different things that we've been involved in. So they're coming. As far as declassification, that's a tough one. I don't really know, but I do know that there is a lot of work in the background going on for us, for the government, all kinds of folks, different corporations that are all teaming up to solve this problem. And now we're really just hoping that, Uncle Sam will start allowing us to do it at a national level. So,
well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for now years of just being an incredible person, and thank you for, and you don't have to come in on your off days and support. That's it's really cool. I know that probably helps too, but at the same time, it's
I love the show. I really do.
I know.
I really do. I love the show. I watch at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I love helping the Foogle fam. I really do. And to all the folks that I've met, we were in Vegas. We were actually there with Five Finger Death Punch. We had them at our booth for 4 days. We were also there with his name's Horny Mike from Counting Cars. He was at our booth, and met lots of Foogle fam there. I was down in Miami a couple weeks ago. Met a couple people. The one name that I remember is Frank. So hey, Frank, if you're listening, it was great to meet you, man. If you see me, come say hi. I love to meet the Foogle fam. I really do.
I know, that was awesome. When you sent us the video of the lead bassist or guitarist, his name is...
He's the bassist, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, lead bassist from Five Finger Death Punch did a video. They said that they were Foogle fam, and then Horny Mike from Counting Cars. Yeah. He ended up being in that video too, saying hi to the Foogle fam and stuff. I thought that was really cool. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you for again, just sending those kind of things and everything else. I appreciate you.
Yep. You're very welcome. Talk to you later.
All right. And if you guys want to get your own EMP shield, again, this is something we actually believe will save lives. That's before we ever even had any kind of partnership, we were telling people to do this. So marfooglenews.com/EMP. Again, this way it helps our show, and you get a big discount. We were grandfathered in before they got, a lot bigger. In fact, they had one little place when we started with them. Now they're on their 3rd factory. So again, get it. Go over and check it out. Make sure to put this link in, and then you'll get a discount, and you'll be helping your favorite channel. I hope that answered everybody's questions. We had so many. We had to kind of pick through and pick the most important, and thought that some of those would cover the other questions. Again, Andrew from EMP. If you were like, who is this? They are, of course, worked with many agencies, and they can't say everything they've done yet. But again, definitely would be considered experts in the field. So.
Feed the haters to the alligators. Your way or the highway, see you later. B.O.D. is the homie and Mr. Vader. If it wasn't for you, I would never made it. Whole city's covered by the cremated. Now they listen to what we were saying. Doesn't matter if the manufacturer or created. But now